Hey guys, you're watching BTech. I'm Basil and this is the Huawei Mate 10. Cheaper than the Pro. It's got a few things the Pro doesn't, like an SD card slot and a 3.5mm headphone jack. Has a few things that the Pro does, like a Kirin 970 and Emotion UI 8. And it also lacks a couple of things like water resistance and an OLED display. But all of that added up, is it worth buying? That's what this video is all about. But before I jump into this, a quick word from our sponsors, Direct Mobiles, delivering excellent deals across the UK for in excess of 23 years. Award-winning customer service as well. And Filofax, giving tablets the world over a leg to stand on with the AnyTab 360. And now back to the Huawei Mate 10. And it makes sense to start by talking about the design. 5.9 inches takes center stage. This thing is a beauty. Very little bezel, 81.6% screen to bezel ratio to be precise. Above the display, you've got that camera, 8 megapixel front camera. You've also got an in-call loudspeaker too, which doubles up as a loudspeaker, pairing with the bottom speaker, and you've got a fingerprint scanner below the display. At the base of the device, that speaker I just spoke about, and of course the USB Type-C for data, charging, and plugging into an external monitor for the EMUI desktop experience. You've got a SD card and nano SIM card slot, while to the right hand side, volume rocker and power button. Up at the top, 3.5mm jack and infrared blaster, while around the back is the camera setup, 20 megapixel camera and a 12 megapixel camera. This has f1.6 apertures across both optical image stabilization on the 12 megapixel main camera. All the autofocus mechanisms you could want, and I'll come on to that in a bit. It's lighter than an iPhone 8 Plus at 186 grams. The iPhone's around 202 grams. What's also excellent is this has a pre-fitted screen protector, which you might be able to make out. And in the box, you also get a case too, and it is a very nice form-fitting case, really easy to put on, as you just saw, really difficult to just accidentally take off. In fact, nigh on impossible, but a simple flip of the side and you can take it off with some intent without too much hassle. So the Mate 10, really good from a design point of view. Yes, it's bigger than the Mate 10 Pro. Yes, it doesn't have the rear-mounted fingerprint scanner, but for a lot of people who like front fingerprint scanners, 16:9 devices as opposed to longer phones, because let's face it, most of the content you watch will be in 16:9 these days. The Mate 10 could be an excellent alternative, and of course let's not forget the fact this has a 3.5mm headphone jack up top, and on the left hand side that SD card slot. As far as the screen goes, it's a different story. Now the screen is sharper than the Mate 10 Pro, sure. I can get in close and you can see there is no issues here when it comes to resolution, but the IPS LCD panel hasn't got the punch, hasn't got the pop of AMOLEDs. It's HDR10 like with the Mate 10 Pro, but side by side there's just no comparison. This looks more washed out, especially off angle. Interestingly, I know OLEDs tend to change color off angle, but this IPS display off angle, by comparison to the OLED, just doesn't look quite as deep and rich and meaningful, but you still have 730 nits of brightness on here. No trouble with outdoor viewing, and content in isolation looks great. The only time this will leave you wanting is when you put it alongside an OLED screen like that on the iPhone 10, Mate 10 Pro, Samsung Galaxy Note 8. As you can see though, stuff still looks great on here. So if you want a good screen but not the best out there, and don't mind the fact that you're not getting that, and let's face it, you're not paying flagship type buck for this thing, then the Mate 10 should absolutely suffice. The Mate 10 and Mate 10 Pro both run the same version of Android 8 with Emotion UI 8. There are a couple of inconsistencies, such as the screen to the left-hand side's Google Now on the Mate 10 Pro. It's highboard on the Mate 10. This might have something to do with the regions it's coming to. It might just be the fact that this is pre-production software. This hasn't had all the updates the Mate 10 Pro has had. This is on version 1.3, I think. The Mate 10 Pro is on version 1.5, but still, I found the general experience to be smooth, didn't have any crashes. A couple of elements were a little bit less refined. A few icons just need revising, which are fixed on the Mate 10 Pro but not quite on here. But the core UI is the same. You've got home screens, a variable number you can add and remove based on widgets and applications that you want. You can also change out your home screen to include, if I jump into my display settings, a applications drawer. So if I tap through on that, it does take a while to swap out, and then I can tap through and you've got an apps drawer And once you've done that, it's nice and quick. Universal search, whether you have an app store or whether you don't. You can also pinch in to activate your home screen settings, swap out your themes, swap out your transitions. Huawei's user interfaces have always been very customizable, and it's no exception on here. They're not quite as customizable as that on the Mate 10 Pro. For example, you can't swap out to having a dark theme in the settings. Maybe that's to take advantage of the OLED display, probably it. You still have a fair few things you can tweak, from the home screen UI right through to your navigations bar. So if I type in the settings NAV, navigation bar, I can have my navigation bar disappear. I can also have a little add-on to bring down my notifications shade if I want to, and I can change the order of my icons depending on whether I'm coming from a Samsung or a different Android phone. So customizable to the nines, really, really nice. What I love about Emotion UI, I said this in my last video, is the speed at which you can organize and folderize your home screen. I don't need an applications tray, so the fact Huawei's brought it back isn't really that much of a concern to me, but for a lot of people, you'll really, really like that fact. And generally speaking, it's gonna be a really, really solid experience with Android 2, because Android 8 brings with it the latest security updates, and of course the Google Play Store. You can download all the applications your heart desires, loads of games and everything like that. EMUI Desktop is an excellent place to start talking about the multimedia experience on the Mate 10. Sure, it's enjoyable to watch content on a phone, but it's more enjoyable to watch it on a big screen. I've got it hooked up to a Moshi dongle, which is just the standard USB-C to HDMI dongle. I've also got a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse connected, although you can use the Mate 10 itself as a keyboard and mouse. You can see I'm moving my mouse cursor across the screen. I can actually type stuff in. So for example, if I want MX player, I can start typing in there MX on the keyboard I've got, and it will pull that up. Opening up MX player though, I want to minimize MX player for a second, and it's appeared minimized down there. And what I want to do is just open the gallery application, because Huawei's own applications are pretty nicely optimized to take advantage of well, the desktop view. Flip open camera videos, and you can see I can scroll left and right through these camera videos using the keyboard really, really easily and naturally. You can see the bottom bar is still here when I preview, but as soon as I come to play the video, which by the way I can listen to through the TV, it all works really, really nicely. Press the escape button to escape the full screen view, and then I can close that. Third-party applications are supported, but they aren't quite as excellent, in the sense that the bar at the bottom is still there, and I haven't found a way to get rid of it. Web browsing is also a dream. Like immediately it's going to default to the mobile view, so I can open YouTube, for example, but then as soon as you force it into desktop view, it all looks like you are browsing it on a desktop really, really nicely right there. And then it all becomes incredibly clickable and scrollable, and it's just like a standard keyboard mouse experience. I'm yet to bump into instances where it doesn't work well, but I'm sure they will be there, especially with third-party applications. Some third-party applications, for example, won't support expandable or resizable windows. Whether they do down the line is going to be one to watch, but we're not going to say either way. As it stands right now though, the Emotion UI desktop experience is a really, really nice to have. Gaming on the Mate 10 is excellent. If you saw my Mate 10 Pro review, then you would have seen hooked up to a Moshi dock, I had PS4 DualShock 4 controller connected. It was also charging at the same time, the Mate 10 Pro, and I had a keyboard connected. It all worked really, really nicely. But if you forget that, I was playing Assassin's Creed, test out game by game. If you forget the fact you even got EMUI desktop, the Kirin 970 paired with a nice big 5.9-inch display just works so well on here. It is such a pleasure. As you can see, Injustice 2 looks fantastic. So does pretty much every other game that I threw at this thing. What's more, the stereo speakers also sound pretty excellent, and it's not that easy to cover them up. Let me increase the volume. You can see, even though I have pretty big hands, and let's go. The speakers, which are located here, I'm not naturally covering up. Let's swap out to him. It's really loud. So from the front to the side, and of course, for anyone who wants it, you have the headphone jack as well. Let's drop the volume on there and just call it that this is an excellent gaming device all in all, like from the speakers right through to the screen, power under the hood, and the 64 gigabytes of storage as well. The Mate 10 has the exact same camera as the Mate 10 Pro, and point and shoot and you'll get a good picture, but it does have a tendency to overexpose. If you're okay to play a bit, and by play I just mean drag down a slider, you can eke out a significantly better picture 9 times out of 10. You don't have to do this all the time, but it's just in bright situations where you will be getting some blown out areas. As you can see, this is a significantly richer picture than this one where you just end up with a lot of stuff blown out. What's really cool though isn't the automatic camera. It's good, but it's not mind-blowing. What's exceptional is the manual controls that you can apply. Jumping into the gallery, you can see I've taken a fair few pictures. This one was taken in Paddington. It was really, really dark outside. It's a long exposure. You've got some ghosting, really, really nice stuff, and you've got loads and loads of detail in there. So if you are prepared to play about with it, you'll get some incredible results. And don't get me wrong, the automatic mode is still nice and competitive, but it does just take a little bit of tinkering to get the automatic mode to do exactly what you want it to do. You've also got a blurred background and sharp foreground mode on here. So for example, I can take a picture like so and tap through on it. And you can see if I jump into the aperture effects, it'll allow me to increase the background blur or reduce it. And I can also apply a filter. So for example, have some boom, exploding background effects, which looks really, really cool. This isn't going to sell the phone for anyone, but again, it's just a nice to have. Opening up the camera UI and jumping out of the wide aperture mode, there's also a portrait mode as well, which blurs out the background and applies beauty effects. You've also got a lossless 2x zoom, which uses the information from the secondary camera, and it isn't quite lossless, I'd say, but it definitely works very, very well. In certain instances, beating out the iPhone's optical zoom, which is cool. What you end up with is a very, very good comprehensive snapper. It can shoot up to 4K video. The 4K video looks really, really good. And what's also nice is the fact that you can shoot wide aperture video. As for the speakers on the Mate 10, they're really, really good. Stereo speakers, louder and better than those of the Mate 10 Pro. It's really hard to cover them up when you're gaming, when you're watching movies, etc. And so as a result, I'm just super impressed. Maybe not the loudest around, the Razer speakers are louder, but definitely these have a nice roundness to them and aren't painful to listen to. What's also awesome is the fact you've got plenty of storage under the hood of this thing. That 64 gigs is great. You've also got that SD card slot, fastest 4G connectivity around, so you're future-proofed in that regard. The USB at the base doubles up not only as a HDMI out, but also to a HDMI desktop experience, but just regular plain screen projection, so it could just be handy for presentations. And of course, the infrared blaster up at the top is a TV remote control. And as for the battery, the 4000 milliamps under the hood will easily get you through a full day. It's not quite as good as the Mate 10 Pro. An hour and a half of video playback took the Mate 10 Pro down to 91%, whereas it took the Mate 10 regular down to 81%. That isn't bad for the Mate 10 regular. It puts it on par with a lot of other top-end battery performance. This will, like I said, see you through a full day, but it isn't quite up there. With the Pro variant, and unsurprising, it's got a bigger screen. And so rounding off, this is a solid 9 out of 10. Beautiful design. It's got all the ports that you're going to want. Expandable storage, not as much onboard storage as the Mate 10 Pro. There is no water resistance, but it's a much more affordable device. So if you can get this in your region, it's definitely one to consider. Pair that with flagship processor and cameras, and yeah, this thing winning. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, click that thumbs up button, subscribe. Any questions I didn't cover in this video, fire them in the comment section below and I will do my best. If you're not already subscribed to the channel as well, subscribe. It's how you stay on top of everything that we do here at BTech. Thanks for watching. Bye.